Today we're gonna talk about shading part 2. I'm gonna show you some of my ways to shade my characters or something like that. So I have a character here. The lines are drawn, and as you can see, I have done a little bit shading on the hair already here, but that's just what I always do, so I'm not considering it shading. But I'm gonna show you 3 ways, maybe 4, but 3 ways that I usually do it. And we're gonna do like this. We have the ink layer here, so I'm gonna do a layer underneath. I'm gonna change it to multiply, and I'm going to 40. Usually when I do shadows, especially on people, I always go up to 40, but not over 40 in opacity, because I think it becomes kind of iffy when you don't do it, when you do that. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna show you. Remember the first part? And if you haven't, go watch the first part on how shadows work. So this is gonna be the simple cell shading kind of version that I do. So I'm just gonna go down here, try to follow the chin, and do the shadow here. So you see, we already got a kind of okay shadow. As you can see, I'm using a kind of bluish purple because it adds a little bit more contrast to when if you're coloring or something like that, and it's also easier to see when you're doing coloring. If you want it to be, you know, black later on, if you're doing a black and white, you can always go just to hue and saturation, and you know, see, you can change it to the gray. You can also make it more intense if you want that. But for this, we're gonna use the bluish purple. As you can see, I did the nose. Remember, the nose is something that sticks out. And we're gonna do a little bit of shadow here up on the eyelid, just to show that we have some shadow there. And I'm gonna do, because the hair is falling in front of the face, I am gonna go and do a little bit of the shadow there. Sometimes you have hair, you can do a little bit of shadowing on that as well, just a simple line. Sometimes you have to do a little bit more shadow just because, you know, how it looks. And sometimes you have to remember, the farther away the hair is from the face, the bigger the shadow is gonna get. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a shadow on the hair like that. And as you can see, we get a kind of a good shadow. I'm gonna go a little bit in the hair as well. Now this is simple. I'm not gonna do anything more on this. I'm just gonna go down, keep going. Remember, folds and stuff like that, that's where you put the shadows and stuff like that. Here you have something that pops out. I'm gonna go a little bit back so it doesn't pop out too much. In this case, the light source is a pretty much usual in front of, a little bit above light source. That's what I usually use for everything, because it looks right. It looks right all the time for most part. I'm doing the fingers here a little bit, and we're gonna do a little bit of shadowing there. As you can see, it's not much I do. I'm just finding the places where the shadow is supposed to be, where something falls upon something else. I try to do a shadow of it. So, as you can see, we get kind of a good shadow. Some here, I'm gonna fill this in just like that, and the arm is gonna pop up a little bit there. Belts, watches and stuff like that, I usually just do a shadow underneath. Sometimes I can do some more detail, and just to give it a little bit more life. Sometimes, like here, you bend the hand forward and over something. Here I don't want to be too much big, but as you can see, I'm just doing simple shading here. The arm is poking out here, so I'm gonna go and give it a little bit more. when it comes to breasts and stuff like this, where I don't want the shadow perhaps to be so much, I usually try and just go a little bit like this because it's round. So I'm trying to keep it, you know, simple enough. But I'm gonna show you the way I usually do this. So you can do it like this and just be kind of happy with it. We're gonna do it on this one as well, and we're gonna be okay with this. I'm sorry if my voice crackles, I'm still kind of sick, so and we're gonna do a little bit of shadow underneath because it is a larger kind of breast. So we're gonna do a little bit of the jacket going here. There we go. So as you can see, this is okay. It works. If you know, if you're gonna simply go back and look, and you can see, yeah, it works. What I usually do is I do this, and then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna mark up like this, so we get the full breast. I'm gonna do it on the other one as well, like so. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a brush and do it a little bit more density. I'm gonna also lower the opacity on the brush, so we get like this. As you can see, we're gonna get a simpler version like this, but I realize now that I'm on the wrong brush. Here we go, lighter brush. There I'm going, and I'm gonna go density, lower it down, and you can see we get a smooth kind of like that. What I want to do is I want the same line, the same crescent moon line, but I want it to be softer because it's fabric, and this, in this case, it goes from being very sharp to very soft. As you can see, we get kind of mixed results. Sometimes you have to go in and, you know, fix a little bit of it. Just try to soften it up, because remember, clothes usually don't get that sharp edges when it comes to shadows. You can kind of small erase it a little bit just to get that right feeling of it. And as you can see, it works a lot better. You can also do it on skin like this, as you can see, so you get a little bit softer shadows if you want. Perfectly works. Okay, so you do this pretty much for all of this. Even when you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to have shadows somewhere in here. Okay, then you go in there and, oh, sorry, I have to go back to the density. But as you can see, you can work more shadows in, and you can work a lot of details into it. Also, if you feel like this is too weak, you can always go stronger. You can always go weaker if you want it to be just a little bit and such. Okay, that's the simple version of how I do it. We're gonna do a new layer, and this time I'm gonna show you the way that I do it when I want a more how should I say it, a more manga kind of style of shading. So I do weak kind of like this, as you can see, just to show where I'm gonna do the shadow. I'm gonna still use purple, but I'm gonna change this one into black and white later on, but just to show you. Now I do lines, and this is what manga do. They do a lot of, you know, lines for some shadows. They do cross hatching, and for this I'm gonna do a kind of cross hatching. I'm gonna take an eraser, just slightly erase the lines that I did, just so that they don't pop out too much. And as you can see, we get some lines here. We could also do a couple of lines perhaps on the nose. Let's see, where can we go? We can go a little bit here, As you can see, I'm trying to, do the shapes, but with lines. Instead of doing them like this, I'm gonna do it instead like this, with lines. And I try to follow the shape and always try to use every line in the same direction. Sometimes you have to change it depending on where it's going, but I always try to keep it a little bit bent, so you get these. You can also do the cross hatching, as I said before, which is doing this. You go over these lines with another line like this. You can also go even worse and go like this. Sometimes too much, sometimes too little. Sometimes it's better to just do the full like, and fill it with this. Okay. Sometimes you do these just to get some kind of feeling for dramatic effect. There is motion, like this. You see, I go like this on the neck, but I'm gonna go on this side like this for this, because I feel like the arm is going this way, so I want to do the lines that way. Same thing with here. Instead of doing, I'm doing thicker lines just to fill it up. So, as you can see, that's the other way, and if I do this, you will see what I mean when you turn it black and white. You see, it gets a bit more effect. It gets that manga effect. So, we're gonna do the next version of this, the next thing I usually do, and that's doing this. I mark everything. Let's see, I'm gonna mark even this, and so hopefully we're gonna get everything marked here that we want. There we go. And we're gonna fill it with purple, the shadow. Sometimes you have to look out so you don't get, something that pops out, like up here. You don't see it too much, but there's a little bit, popping out. And the brush I used now wasn't the best. Let's see, there we go. So now we have the shadow. I'm gonna lower it a little bit down so you can see a little bit better. But as you can see, here we have the entire thing covered now in shadows. What I did was I selected everything outside the lines, because the lines cover everything. Sometimes you have to close off lines to get the effect. But anyway, you mark everything outside, invert, selection, boom, it chooses everything else but what you've chosen, and then you just fill it up. On a different layer, of course, because as you can see, it's on a different layer. But what do I use this for? Well, you remember the technique I did before in the last part, where you can shadow everything else up, but we're not gonna do that on this part. We're gonna take a soft eraser. I'm gonna go try to get a pretty decent, like this, okay? A soft, I have density or opacity 47, and I'm gonna go like this. I'm even gonna take a bigger one, and as you can see, I'm going a little bit like this. I'm covering the eye, the cheeks, a little bit on the nose, on the chin, on the neck, and I'm gonna take a bigger one and go a little bit over the breasts, going like this, and a little bit over the hand, a little bit on the outside of the character, on the fingers here, trying to hit all the light points where the light, gets really bright. So like on this side on the hair, this side on the hair, trying to cover up like this. So why am I doing this? Well, it's because of one thing, and I will show you soon. I will just do it like this, okay? So where I want the shadows to be really dark, I keep it dark, okay? I do sometimes a little bit on the outline of the character just so we get the glow effect a little bit, so it doesn't become too dark. As you can see now, it doesn't look that good, okay? We're gonna lower the density even more. Still gonna use this just to do a little bit more to make it a little bit like this. Okay, here we go. Something like that. Alright. That probably works good. So why am I doing this? Well, this method I only use because this is just the shadow for the skin. So if we do a coloring, I'm gonna go here and let's see, we're gonna open up my art folder and we're gonna go, where do I have it? There we go, skin color. I'm gonna pick a skin color here. We're gonna do the same thing, select everything on the outside. Hopefully we don't have to do too much cleaning up. There we go. So, and select, invert selection, and boom. Here we go. Now we have a color. Just a color, but in the finished version you will have different colors and all that. But now we put this on top and we can put multiply on. As you can see, we get a little bit like this. And usually I don't do it in purple, but I had to do it in purple so you could see what I mean. Because as you can see, on 100% we get this. And you can try different things. You have, you know, linear burn and lighten and all of these things that do different things, as you can see. But what I usually do is do multiply of the color I have beneath. So I take this. Let's say we're gonna do it like this, just to show you what I mean. I'm gonna take a. She's gonna have a. Let's say she can have a blue kind of hair. That will work fine. And I'm not gonna do this very good right now. I'm just gonna go so you can see what I mean. So if she has blue hair right now. Oh, sorry. I did this. Let's lock the layers so we can't go outside. There we go. And here we go. So I'm coloring this now just to show you what I mean. Because this is something I use to, you know, enhance if I color my art. So we're gonna do this. So she has this blue hair. She has white in the eyes. And let's see, she can have very green eyes. Or not, because I'm still on the white. There we go. As you can see, I am not doing this very, you know, perfect here, but let's see, she can have a little bit of pink on the lips, just so you can see what I mean. So, as you can see, the multiply of this actually becomes darker blue and all that. But I am not gonna use that. I'm gonna go to the color layer that we have used. I am going to duplicate it. And then I'm gonna use that and multiply. As you can see, we get darker colors of everything. Okay, so if I slide the opacity, you can see how it changes. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take that layer, take our soft brush. I'm gonna go 40 this time, and as you can see, I'm gonna go and lighten up the areas where I know the light hits. So as you can see, we're gonna get a lighter like this. You see? Same thing with hands. If I go here, we're gonna get a lighter. Now this takes some practice because it is hard sometimes to see what you're doing. Okay? And I wish you could just take this and use it, but the purple doesn't work with everything. You have to remember that. What I usually do is just I take a duplicated layer of the flats and then I go a little bit like this, just to enhance it, not too much. And then I try to find where I feel like, okay, it gets a little bit more life, but not too much. So somewhere around 60, 50 perhaps, maybe sometimes up, sometimes more. Okay, so if we take that and we're gonna do, you remember our old this? Now we can use this. We can punch it up a little bit so you can see. This was the simple shading. As you can see, with the combination of the other one, you know, where you have your color and you push it up a little bit, you get more life into it, and then just becoming flat. So these are the ways that I shade. Usually I just do the simple shade. The coloring is depending on if I want, you know, a little bit more nuance to the whole thing. Because you can also do this. I'm gonna show you one last thing. And I'm gonna put this layer over everything. No, wait, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put a new layer over the flats layer. I'm gonna choose it, and in this program it's clip at layer below. I think in Photoshop it's create mask. So clip at layer below. Now this means that it will only act on the color on this layer. This is the only area where it will be affected. Okay, so if I take, for instance here, I take a red, you will see nothing goes outside the area that has been locked to. Okay, what I do now is I take a foreground to transparent. I am gonna use, perhaps for this, I'm gonna go with a more bluish kind of color, and I'm gonna go like this. You see, we get a shadow kind of stuff like this. So if I put back the lines, you will see it doesn't affect the inks, it just affects the color. And I can do like this, multiply, and I can change a little bit. So we get a little bit of a gradient, and this I usually just put around 20 and lower. You could also, you know, use a lighter blue and go somewhere around here. Or maybe I will do a more red and put up. As you can see, we don't get the, okay. Oh, okay, it doesn't choose. Okay, sorry, my bad. Take a red. There we go. Like this. You can see we get a little bit more color and stuff like that. So when you multiply these and you get like this, I'm going to lower this down a little bit like this. So you can see we get more life into it. And that's what shading is all about. It's about creating, you know, a more three-dimensional image, and to get the image more life. The same thing will go when we're gonna cover, you know, lighting and stuff like that, where you're gonna have highlights and stuff like that. But that comes later. This is how I shade right now. So I usually do the easy shade, or I do the, you know, the manga kinda shading like this. Usually I do the manga shading when I'm sketching and when I'm, you know, just trying stuff out. When it comes to coloring, I usually just do the more simple, easier version of it. So I hope you have learned something, and I will see you in the next tutorial video. Bye!